Vidhammer Fantasy.
Welcome back to Vidhammer. I'm Spudlow, and in this video I'm going over another weekly game where I take my Skaven up against the vampire counts again, over at Learn to Play Games in Lutz, Florida. This is another 2,500 point game in preparation for Crucible 3 a couple of weeks from now. I'm going up against a different opponent this time, and his list is quite a bit tougher, as you'll soon find out.
We have a third party set up our terrain and pick some special rules to go along with them. The broken ground in the lower left is impassable terrain. Both forests are mysterious. The dice tower up at the top left is actually a wizard's tower, and the stone obstruction in the upper right is a temple of skulls. Yes, this is the same terrain piece that played havoc on the ogres in weekly game 2. We roll for a random scenario and get death and glory. The relevance of the scenario quickly diminishes, though. I win the roll for board edge and elect to set up on the left side, and I start out deployment with one of my clan rat units. He has 4 units of dogs and 2 units of fell bats, so I'm going to have my entire army down before his big blocks come out on the board. As such, I have to have my strategy down from the start. I'm not looking to run towards him. I'd rather stay back and shoot as much as I can. Unfortunately, with a block of black knights that have his 3 nasty characters in them, it's not going to be long before he's trampling my rats into the ground. My first clan rat unit just touches the forest, so I roll for it and it ends up being a venom thicket, which gives poison attacks for models inside, but it's also dangerous terrain. This screws me over psychologically because I put my slaves on the bottom side of the forest, and I should have put them right in the center and have just taken the wounds. I've got 1 clan rat unit at the very top to hide my Grey Seer behind the wizard's tower as much as possible. I don't put the Hell Pit and Doom Wheel at the front of my line, and this is because I don't know where his Terrorgeists are going to be, and I don't know if I'm going to get first turn. If I put them at the front of my line, he can fly over and be within shooting range and pop both of those before they can do anything. Having the Doom Wheel away from other units is fine, but the Hell Pit is a long way from where it should be. Basically, everything he has goes across from my Storm Vermin. He keeps both of the Terrorgeists at the top as well, but I'm sure he just wanted them starting off next to his general. For spell generation, he has a level 1 vampire with the lore of vampires that takes the signature spell Invocation of Nehek, a level 2 necromancer that ends up with Doom and Darkness and Spirit Leech, and a level 4 vampire that gets Invocation of Nehek as well as Van Hell's Dance Macabre, Curse of Years, and Gaze of Nagash. All his casters and his BSB go into the Black Knights. On my side, my level 1 Warlock Engineer takes his signature spell, Warp Lightning, while the level 2 Engineer ends up rolling doubles and gets Scorch and Death Frenzy. Since I had 3 spells that I wanted for Ruin, I go all 4 of my Grey Spear spells on the lore of Plague, and I end up with Wither, Plague, Cloud of Corruption, and the dreaded 13th. There wasn't much need for the 13th in this game, but I figured it might come in more handy than Vermintide. Other starter game elements see the Storm Vermin getting Hatred from the Skaven Brew effect, and the Grey Seer ending up with 1 Warpstone token. I win the first turn roll and start out moving my Grey Seer in range of the Wizard's Tower as my only real movement choice. Our first magic phase ends up 6 versus 3, and I use my first 2 dice for Warp Lightning on one of the dog units and take it down to a single model, and I use the last 4 for Scorch on another dog unit, but he's able to dispel it by 1. In shooting, both Warp Lightning cannons shoot for the Terrorgeists and hit, but stick in the ground with no effect. The Warp Fire Thrower almost takes out another dog unit, and the Gutter Runners fail to wound the Fell Bats since they're skirmishers and I needed 7 after marching. Now for the vampire counts. The Giant Rats and Warp Fire Thrower both get charged by dog units. The Warp Fire Thrower is able to stand and shoot and kill off its charger, and even though I don't expect the Giant Rats to survive, I have them hold anyways, so at least that dog unit will be out of the way on my turn. Then I take a late action as I needed to roll to restrain for the Doom Wheel from firing into the Hell Pit. I fail the leadership test, but I also roll a misfire and the Doom Wheel runs back 10 inches. Magic is 8 versus 4, and he uses his first die for a bound item that casts Van Hell's Dance Macabre. I let it go and he moves his ghouls forward 8 inches, not thinking too much about it. His next 2 dice go for Gaze of Nagash on the Warpfire Thrower, and I have to let this one go as well. As much as I hate to lose that thing, he has a spell to lower my leadership by 3, then he can use Spirit Leech right afterwards, so with only 4 dispel dice, I've gotta hold on to them for more important spells. The Warpfire Thrower actually ends up blocking all but a single wound, so close yet so far. Then he uses 2 dice for Spirit Leech on my Grey Seer, and I roll 2 dice to dispel that one. Finally, he uses his last 3 dice for Curse of Years on my Storm Vermin. I need to roll a 9 on 2 dice to dispel this, so I go for the roll rather than use my Dispel Scroll since I'm not in combat yet. I roll an 8, and it takes out 7 Storm Vermin and puts a wound on the Warlord. For the Dog Rat Scrap, both manage a single wound, but the rats manage to stick around for another go. Back to my turn, I have the slaves charge the squatter, and the Hell Pit manages to give the giant rats some support. I jostle the upper clan rats to be out of the way of a decent charge, and I move the lower clan rats to block those central dogs from charging the Warp Lightning Cannon. It wouldn't be such a big deal if I hadn't put my assassin in that unit at the start of the game. Magic this time is 5 versus 4. I really want to get Wither off on the Black Knights to give my units a chance of causing damage to them, since he's got 4 dice to dispel. I decide to roll all my dice for it, and he uses his Dispel Scroll on it. Not too bad, except for the little Curse of Years on my Storm Vermin. This is realistically what costs me this entire game. It cascades into the next magic phase, and it costs me another wound on my Warlord, and 11 Storm Vermin. For shooting, the Doom Wheel restrains, the first Warp Lightning Cannon shoots for the double Terrorgeist shot and overloads, taking out a couple of slaves and their pet dog. The second hits both at strength 10, and I roll a 1 to wound the first, and the second one ends up taking 2 wounds. Then I cap off the Doom Rocket at the Knights, and it hits 1 inch over my target spot. All but 1 Knight get hit, and it ends up taking out 6 in the total. Finally, the Gutter Runners manage to kill off the first unit of Fellbats. For our single combat, the Hell Pit helps kill off the dogs and overruns to get a little closer into the action. Over to the Vampire Counts, and here comes the big charge. The Ghouls and the Black Knights both charge into the Storm Vermin, while the other units maneuver around. The Terrorgeists don't have room to land behind my line, so they settle for the up-close and personal approach. Then magic ends up 9 versus 5, effectively ending the game. I have to use some of my Dispel dice to get rid of Curse of Years, so he's going to have a bunch of undisputed dice, and this makes things much worse than it should be. He uses his first 2 dice for the bound item to cast Van Hell's, and I have to let it go. That lets the Knights re-roll their misses. Then I use 3 of my dice to dispel Curse of Years, as he rolls 2 to put Van Hell's on his Ghoul unit as well. Next is 2 dice for Invocation of Nehek on his Cavalry that I'm able to dispel with my last 2 dice. Finally, he uses his last 3 to cast Doom and Darkness on my Grey Seers unit. He gets Irresistible Force, so those guys are Leadership 7 now. The caster gets a wound in the backlash, as well as a few Knights, Storm Vermin, and Ghouls, but the damage is done. If I didn't have to dispel Curse of Years, then I stood a chance of dispelling 1 attempt at Van Hell's on the Knights, and I could have possibly used a Dispel Scroll on the second. As it is, all of my guys are going to die, and I'm not going to scratch his characters. In the second phase, both Terrorgeists double-team the Hell Pit and take it down with a resulting panic test, scaring the giant rats and the Warp Lightning Cannon. Now for our combat. I have my Warlord issue a challenge, and his general accepts. He has always strikes first with Red Fury, and he's on the charge. My Warlord only has 2 wounds left, so I die without getting a shot off. More damage goes into overkill, but it doesn't really matter. The Storm Vermin don't manage to kill off his characters. I need Snake Eyes after all the damage is done, and I run. The Standard and BSB go down, and the last 5 Storm Vermin end up getting away, but it's effectively endgame at this point. The Hell Pit doesn't even think about standing back up in the middle of that screaming gallery. I have the slaves charge the Fell Bats, and the Clan Rat units try to get set up for the next turn. Another awesome magic phase for me is 5 versus 5. I have the Grey Seer eat a Warpstone token and go for Wither on the Knights, which goes off, and the Grey Seer takes a wound from the Warpstone token. Then I use my last 3 to try Scorch, but he dispels it with his 5. In shooting, the Gutter Runners manage 4 wounds on the Terrorgeist, but he saves 1 and sticks around. 1 Warp Lightning Cannon is still cleaning its britches, while the other one shoots for the full health Terrorgeist and misfires again, but nothing happens. Then the Doom Wheel finally gets a legitimate shot on the Terrorgeist, and of course, misfires. For combat, the bats take a wound and lose the rest to crumbling, and I have the slaves reform to face the action. Get a bucket, cause it's time to mop up. The Cav charge the upper cannon, the ghouls manage to get around the wizard's tower, and the Terrorgeist double charge the slaves just for giggles. Magic is 6 versus 4. He uses his first die for the book's bound spell again. I didn't realize that this was not a single-use item, so it's much more powerful than I previously thought. I try to dispel it with a single die on my level 4, but I roll a 2, so the spell goes through, and I can't dispel with my level 4 now. Great. Fortunately, he returns the favor by having his level 4 roll Snake Eyes on his next attempted spell. Then his last 3 dice go for Spirit Leech on the Warp Lightning Cannon, but my level 2 is able to match the casting value for the Dispel. For the Screaming phase, the first Terrorgeist is out of range of the cannon, so he hits the slaves, but the second one's able to take out the cannon. In the slave combat, the Terrorgeist is unable to hit the Warlock Engineer, and despite the slaves taking a lot of wounds, they're still steadfast on a 9, thanks to that Warlock surviving. But I still fail the roll, and they explode. I lose the Warlock Engineer in the explosion, but at least it finishes off the wounded Terrorgeist. Things don't go quite so well in the other combats, though. Cavalry make quick work of the cannon, and the lower Clan Rats are forced to take a panic test of their own on a 9. And I fail this one as well, with the Clan Rats and the Hidden Assassin running right off the board. Then up at the top, the ghouls kill off the Grey Seer and win the combat by enough for the Clan Rats to need Snake Eyes to see through the doom and darkness. But they decide to leave the table instead. It's just easier that way. I call the game at this point. I'm bloody enough as it is. My only solace from all this is that by the time I get to the tournament, my ass will be blue. Then I just won't feel anything anymore. The only downside is, having a blue ass. Hope you like this battle report. Be sure and check back for new videos each week. Do me a favor and subscribe, like the video if you want to see more, and no matter what color your ass is, keep fighting.